Eren was considered the strongest warrior, boasting a body stronger than the hardest metal and the ability to wield any weapon imaginable. He destroyed every single monster that came his way with a single attack, owing to his monstrous strength. Eren was a member of the heroes' party, and along with his comrades, they defeated the Demon King, who threatened to annihilate the entire Uzurtia continent. However, the Demon King performed one final, desperate gambit by blowing himself up. Eren bravely stood in the path of the blast to protect his comrades, but he paid the ultimate price, his life. Eren came to be known as Eren the Great, and stories of his heroics were passed down and immortalized. 300 years later, Eren is reborn as Egil Schwain. Both his parents are skilled magicians, and they both hope for Egil to grow up to become a brilliant court magician. When Egil turns 3 years old, his parents have him undergo an ability appraisal from a magic crystal, even though Egil knows deep down that he is a warrior. When the crystal glows brightly, his parents become overjoyed. His father runs off to let his relatives know, while his mother rushes off to prepare a celebration feast. However, the only reason why the crystal glowed is because Egil retained all his skills and stats from his past life as Eren. He possesses a moderate amount of magic power, but it is nowhere near the amount of strength and resistance he has. Egil tries to use the crystal again, but he accidentally crushes it using his brute strength. Even his muscle density has remained unchanged. Strength is something that Egil mastered in his previous life, but that also means that his magical ability has room to improve. As he grows up, Egil steadily develops a love and respect for magic, and he genuinely has fun practicing and honing his abilities. When Egil turns 16 years old, he is sent to the capital to take the entrance exam for the Hero Academy. The Hero Academy was founded 300 years ago, shortly after the defeat of the Demon King, to train the next generation of heroes. Egil is eager to become known as a court magician, the highest class bestowed upon magic users. The campus is also home to statues of the heroes' party. Naturally, this includes a statue of Eren. Egil doesn't remember ever being that big. Egil takes the first exam, a written test. Most of the questions involve general knowledge and basic magic theory, both of which he has a masterful grasp on. Maya, the proctor and instructor at the exam, tells the class that their time is up. After a short break, they are to proceed to the training grounds for a practical exam. While Maya goes through the exam papers, she finds that the average score is around 40 points. She becomes intrigued when one of the test papers contains magical syntax written in ancient magic characters. These characters make the associated magic spell stronger than normal, and Maya is surprised that there would be anyone capable of performing such a feat. The only other person capable of such a feat would be the great mage Larina. She reads the name Egil and wonders what sort of child he is. Egil joins the other examinees at the training grounds, where they are to undergo a run-of-the-mill magic measurement exam. The average score appears to be 120, and Amilda, another instructor at the academy, finds this number adequate. Egil wants to become a magician to match Larina at her peak, so he resolves to pass this exam no matter what. Egil steadies his arm and tries to adjust his power, as he doesn't want to attract suspicion by displaying above-average magic. Egil unleashes a small burst of explosion magic, strong enough to nearly blow everyone away. Other examinees flock to Egil and praise him for how impressive his magic was. When Amilda walks over to inspect the target, he discovers that Egil's ability is rated at 1011. This is his first time seeing 4 digits on the magic exam. Egil curses himself for overdoing it. The next event is a swordsmanship exam, which is still a simple test of strength. Examinees are free to use any weapon they desire. Drum, heir to the great Ulister family, proudly goes first to show off his strength. He hits the target dummy with all his might, resulting in a score of 300. This is enough to elicit a few oohs from the crowd, and it gives Egil a secure baseline to aim for. Soon, it is Egil's turn, but he is cautious not to overdo himself. If he performs too well, he might be educated as a swordsman instead of as a magician. He grabs a wooden sword, hoping to minimize his power as much as possible. Egil readies his sword and stands motionless in front of the target. Amilda tells him that he can go already, but Maya points out that he already did. They look at the target dummy and see an impossibly high number of 9,999. Drum and the other students look at this and find it impossible, with many thinking that the dummy is just broken. However, a lone girl, seeing this, runs up to Egil with a hint of familiarity. The target dummy's display spins erratically, apparently because Egil hit with so much force that it is unable to calculate it. Maya watches Egil with great interest. Egil starts walking towards the arena for the practical exam. Suddenly, Egil catches a maid who was pushed away by Drum, who is extremely agitated. Drum drones on about how the maid should be thankful for being able to take the exam in the first place. When he notices Egil, he walks up to him and disregards Egil's feat as the result of a machine error. In reply, Egil criticizes Drum's immature and childlike behavior. Egil points toward his maid and declares that she is nothing more than his private property, and he is free to do with her as he wishes. Egil shakes off his hand and remarks that people are people. They aren't things, and they are most definitely not Drum's things. This makes Drum even angrier, but he has the opportunity to take his anger out sooner than he thinks, as he just happens to be Egil's opponent for the practical exams. Drum intends to make Egil regret ever standing against him. Drum's maid, on the other hand, feels responsible for how things turned out. Amilda and Meyer observe their duel with great interest. Drum has armed himself with a first-class wand designed to amplify magic, while Egil is using a simple wooden wand for practice. After much anticipation, the referee begins the fight. Drum is the first to strike, and he summons a powerful lightning bolt to circle right above Edgil. Observers are quick to point out that the skill is meant to be used against powerful dragons, not humans. Edgil just might die. Drum laughs maniacally as his spell takes effect, but to his shock, Edgil retaliates by using the exact same spell, neutralizing it completely. This makes Drum even angrier. It should be impossible for Edgil to use elements other than fire. While that may be true now, 300 years ago, it was perfectly normal for everyone to use all 5 magical attributes. However, Drum remains undeterred. He discards his wand and draws his sword, remarking that it doesn't matter how many magic spells Edgil knows. Drum wields the demonic sword Geoheart, a special anti-magic blade meant for killing spellcasters. All magic used against its user is nullified. The referee pities Edgil and believes the battle is over. Drum rushes forward and slashes Edgil with his sword, but Edgil simply raises his staff and sends Drum blasting off again. He can almost see Team Rocket from up there. As Drum crashes into a nearby building, Edgil quips that he is still better at martial arts than magic. Edgil marches up to Drum, who is still in a daze over being sent flying across the sky. Edgil grabs him and forces him to swear not to bully any servant or anyone weaker than him again, threatening to drag him back to the arena so that they can continue their battle. Drum, unwilling to go through that again, promises not to. He admits defeat, and Edgil is declared the victor. The entire Colosseum cheers him on. Edgil passes the entrance exam with flying colors. However, because the devices were unable to measure Edgil's abilities, he did not receive a proper ranking. A few days later, Edgil heads to the academy to enroll. He first drops by the students' dorms, known as the Yusei dormitory. He meets the dorm mother, Kay, whose job it is to help students with their day-to-day lives. Kay informs Edgil that his roommate is Shannon, a stereotypical pretty boy. In her opinion, Edgil and Kay are the perfect combination between a feminine male and a burly tough guy. Afterwards, Edgil joins the other students at the auditorium for the entrance ceremony. While the dean gives his welcome address, Edgil notices that several familiar faces manage to pass the exam, including Drum. Finally, the dean calls the batch representative, Shannon, to make some remarks on stage. Shannon, despite his feminine appearance, is a guy. Shannon declares that there is only one person stronger than he is, and he will not lose to anyone else. After these brief remarks, Shannon steps down. While the male students wonder what that was all about, the female students fawn over his soft appearance. Edgil sees for himself who his roommate is, and he wonders if they'd be able to get along. Suddenly, Shannon confronts Edgil in the middle of the hallway. A crowd quickly forms, believing that Shannon intends to pick a fight with him. Shannon runs up to Edgil and locks him in an embrace. Edgil is cautious about his next move, but to his surprise, Shannon calls him Big Brother Aaron. Edgil asks him how he knows that name, and Shannon reveals that he is Luca. It would be impossible for Edgil to forget that name. 300 years ago, he was one of 4 people who defeated the Demon Lord and restored peace to the world. Luca was his leader, known far and wide as the hero. 300 years ago, Edgil gave his life to save his fellow comrades. Thanks to his efforts, Luca and the others managed to defeat the Demon King, but only by sealing his body and soul. Luca wasn't sure that the Demon King and his army wouldn't return, which is why he and the others opened the Hero Academy. 300 years later, he was reborn as Shannon, and he ended up reuniting with Edgil. Luca has always called Aaron his brother. Aaron was 5 years older than him, so he showed Luca a lot about swordsmanship, hunting, and other manly things. Edgil asks him if he was reborn as a man, but Shannon explains that she is, and apparently, always was a girl. The issue is her parents. They wanted her to join the personal guards, which only accept men. Because of that, Shannon has to live as a boy. She even has to wear chest binders to hide her true gender. She is curious about why Edgil has enrolled at the academy and is surprised to learn that he intends to become the top magician. She always remembered him as someone who considered physical strength to be the best, but she's confident that Edgil can also make it as a great magician. A stroke of luck brings Shannon and Edgil together, not only as classmates but as seatmates. Drum glares at Edgil from afar, annoyed that his main opponent is in the same class as him. Maya, the class advisor, introduces herself and tells everyone to settle down. She will be watching over them for the next 3 years. She has the class introduce themselves one by one, starting from the back. Abby is upbeat, flashy, and dreams of becoming a world-class priestess. Claire is serious, no nonsense, and has the goal of becoming a knight. Shannon is surprised that Claire wants to become a knight despite being a girl. Drum proudly stands up and declares that he will become the next hero should the Demon King ever come back to life. People are already quick to notice his arrogance. After Drum's maid Mar makes her introduction as an aspiring sage, it is Edgil's turn. He stands up and states his intent to become the best magician of all time. The rest of the class is surprised. Given his massive body and impressive feat during the strength test, they had all assumed he was aiming to become a warrior of some sort. While Abby admires Edgil's muscular body, Drum is still visibly full of resentment over their previous encounter. Claire, on the other hand, has nothing to say. Shannon goes next. Although she acknowledges that she had the highest recorded scores at the entrance exam, she states that there is one person who is stronger and cooler than her in every way. She grabs Edgil by the arm, indicating that he is that person. This obviously causes quite an uproar in class, as this is no small declaration. Shannon exclaims that she owes everything she knows about being a hero to Edgil, and that she has admired him for the longest time. She starts passionately talking about Edgil and his great heroic feats, enough to fill a text bubble to the brim. Maya clears her throat and interrupts her. She only asked Shannon to introduce herself, not to introduce Edgel as though she's his professional hypeman. Before Shannon can speak another word, Edgel closes her mouth shut. On the way back to the dorms, Edgel reminds Shannon not to tell anyone else about their past as the kingdom's heroes. Shannon apologizes, claiming that she just got carried away. When they return to the dorms, Kay notices that Edgel and Shannon already seem to be well acquainted with one another, perhaps a little too acquainted. With their first real classes tomorrow, Edgel suggests that they sleep early. However, he has some issues living with Shannon, as she is still secretly a woman living as a man within the dorm. Shannon begs Edgel to let her stay, reasoning that they used to travel together just fine in the past. She has also already enrolled as a boy, and there's no way she can go to the girls' dorms now. Edgel agrees to look the other way for now, and he tells her to shower first. When Shannon exits the bathroom, Edgel averts his eyes. The real magic here is that Shannon managed to hide those weapons of mass destruction to begin with. After washing up, Edgel returns to the bedroom, where Shannon asks if he'd be willing to sleep with her for the night. Shannon recalls the times when Edgel would sleep with her and gently pat her head, which would quickly send her off into a deep sleep. Shannon, or rather Luca, was chosen by God to be the hero. She was entrusted with a legendary weapon to defeat the Demon King, but the massive weight of expectation would often cause her great stress, so Edgel did his best to comfort her. Edgel sees no need to do the same now, but Shannon begs him to, as she is irrationally afraid that if she wakes up, she won't see Edgel there anymore. Edgel relents but clarifies that he'll only be doing this for her once. Shannon lies down next to Edgel and immediately feels safer and more comfortable. Not long after Shannon falls asleep, Edgel is inevitably reminded of how he used to travel with her, and he realizes that the other members of the party might have reincarnated as well. It turns out that friendships can last more than one lifetime. The next day, Edgel and Shannon head to school to attend their first day of classes. On the way, they encounter Claire standing near a statue of Aaron. Edgel approaches Claire, and the two appear to have remembered each other's names. Claire remarks that Edgel is quite famous among the freshmen, given all that happened during the entrance exam. Claire detests Edgel as an evil brute who viciously beat down his classmate. She thinks that he is completely unlike Aaron, a great warrior who joined the Knight's Order at the young age of 16. Claire admires Aaron for his great defense and overwhelming might. He was a human juggernaut who gave his own life to ensure that his comrades survived the Demon King's final spell. Although credit largely went to Luca for the Demon King's defeat, Claire believes that Aaron was the true hero. She entered this school because she wanted to emulate his feats. Edgel tells Claire that Aaron wasn't the only strong person in the party. He credits the other members of the party for allowing Aaron to perform as well as he did. In the end, Aaron was a warrior who fulfilled his role, nothing more, nothing less. He believes that Claire is idolizing him a little too much. Claire suddenly draws her sword, angry that Edgel is speaking ill of the great Aaron like he knew him personally. Of course, he knows him. He's him. The atmosphere is tense as Claire intends to punish Edgel for speaking ill about Aaron. Edgel can tell that Claire appears to be a skilled swordsman, but she is still inexperienced. He easily brushes her blade aside with his finger, and with sufficient force to teeter Claire off balance. Just as Claire is about to retaliate, Edgel lowers his head and apologizes. She allows Claire to think however she wishes about Aaron. If Aaron serves as her motivation, then it is better to keep it that way. Edgel runs off, and Claire is left speechless. Edgel and his classmates attend a swordsmanship class, a mandatory lesson for all students regardless of their aspirations. Their instructor is Grand Diesel. He has the students duel each other with wooden swords so he can get a better grasp of their abilities. Eventually, it is Shannon's turn to fight. Edgel observes as her movements seem to have not slowed down in the slightest, and she easily overwhelms her opponent with sheer speed and strength. Shannon wins easily, though her victory was never in question. She happily waves to Edgel, hoping to be praised and patted on the head. Drum is rather annoyed by how close they are. Gran quickly announces the next two opponents, Edgel and Claire. The pair take their positions on stage. While Claire respects Edgel's desire to pursue magic, she declares that she has dedicated her whole life to the sword, and she cannot see herself losing to anyone when it comes to that. Edgel remarks that there is always going to be someone better. When the battle begins, Claire rushes in with a powerful thrust, but Edgel swiftly parries it. The speed of their battle is blindingly fast, and observers quickly realize Edgel has yet to be hit a single time. Shannon, on the other hand, already expected him to be this good. Claire feels a twinge of frustration. Not a single one of her attacks has made its mark, and Edgel hasn't flinched even once. Claire acknowledges his strength, but she decides to end the battle here and now. She performs her secret technique, Twin Dragon Flash. She unleashes two simultaneous thrusts that send forward two Thunder Dragons. Claire boasts that his technique was once used by Aaron to defeat an army of monsters, and she is confident that not even Edgel will be able to do anything against it. To her shock, Edgel simply swats the dragons away with his wooden sword. When she asks him how he managed to do that, Edgel calmly tells her that she used it the wrong way. He takes up a stance and offers to show her the real way it is supposed to be used. Nothing beats the original. Edgel performs the exact same Twin Dragon Flash. Claire avoids the twin dragons as they smash into her location, but she fails to see the second attack. The dragons coil around her and restrict her movements. Edgel explains that the Twin Dragon Flash is not meant as an offensive attack, but as a move to restrain and capture a target. This is meant to overcome the short range all swordsmen suffer from. The dragons electrocute Claire, but not enough to kill her. Gran declares Edgel a winner. The The students are in an uproar. Ejil somehow managed to beat a swordsman using her own technique. Claire asks Ejil how he managed to use Aaron's move. Ejil realizes that he got carried away, and now he has to come up with a lie to explain how he used a swordsman's technique. After giving it much thought, he claims to have inherited Aaron's will, which he compares to being a disciple of sorts. This would explain why he knows that Aaron hated being treated like a god hero, and why he was able to use the twin dragon flash technique. Shan wonders who would fall for such an obvious, barefaced lie. Claire falls for the obvious, barefaced lie. She believes it so much that she asks Ejil to take her in as a disciple. Claire, wishing to become a great hero like Aaron, asks Ejil to take her in as a disciple. However, Ejil refuses, stating that he wishes to become a magician, not a swordsman. Claire believes this to be a massive waste of talent. Undeterred and refusing to take no for an answer, Claire continued to visit Ejil and begged him to take her in as a disciple. Ejil and Shan manage to escape, but Shan believes that Claire might be a worthy disciple. However, Ejil is completely against taking in any new disciples, recalling how no one was able to keep up with his training regimen in the past. Just like Claire, Shan thinks that this is a waste. Ejil died rather unexpectedly as Aaron, and only his twin dragon flash technique was passed down. She warns him that, with the seal on the Demon King growing weaker, it would be smart to pass down his skills to others. Moments later, Claire finds them again. She again begs to be his disciple, offering to do almost anything for it. Ejil relents, but he will only consider it if Claire can undergo his training regimen for a week. The next morning, Ejil has Claire put on a full suit of plate armor so they can go on a 20-kilometer run. Ejil puts on his own suit of armor, and he speeds off. Claire does her best to keep up with his pace. When the run ends, Claire is completely exhausted. Ejil has her show him her palm so he can see how much she practices her swordsmanship. After inspecting her hands, she shows his. His hands are basically just one huge callus with some hand here and there. This is the result of 10,000 daily practice swings. Even though Ejil wishes to become a magician, he has not neglected his swordsmanship training. Old habits die hard. Ejil hands Claire a sword and instructs her to swing it 10,000 times. The moment Claire holds the sword, she begins to swing it. From dawn until morning classes, and from lunch until the final bell, Claire continued to swing her sword. Eventually, well into the night, Claire finishes her 10,000 swings. Exhausted, Claire falls to her knees. Ejil commends her on a job well done, and he tells her to follow the exact same regimen the next day. Ejil dispels her naive notion that she'd only have to go through this punishment once. Ejil has had many disciples make it through the first day of training only to give up on the second. He will see if Claire's like them or if she intends to be strong. Claire dutifully follows her training menu, but the real challenge starts now. The longer she swings in her exhausted physical state, the more her body cries out in pain, and the stress begins to whittle away her mind. During class, Claire finds herself falling asleep. She forcefully keeps herself awake by slapping herself on the face, the sound echoing throughout the entire class. Abby wonders why she did such a thing. The mind doesn't seem to mind. Ejil had instructed her not to miss any classes at all. Shannon is worried that Claire is putting her life at risk, but Ejil retorts that this was Claire's decision alone. It is up to her if she can tough it out for an entire week. That evening, Ejil observes Claire's sword swings underneath the state of Aaron. He can tell that her body is at its physical limits, and her spirit alone is keeping her moving. However, her pose remains rigid and dignified, as though she has reached a pure and clean state of mind. Ejil approaches Claire and asks her why she is trying so hard. She replies that at first it was because she admired Aaron, but that was before she met him. She sees how much stronger Ejil is than her, and she cannot help but feel defeated knowing that Ejil has inherited Aaron will. At the same time, she began to admire him. She views Ejil as strong, reliable, and a worthy successor to Aaron technique. She is trying so hard to become his disciple, and one day, she even hopes to surpass him. Ejil says nothing in reply. Afterwards, Claire continued her training regimen religiously and without cutting corners. Eventually, on the 7th day, Claire completes her final practice swing. As agreed, Ejil takes her in as his disciple. He warns her that the real training starts now and Claire is eager to impress. She swears to surpass in one day as her ultimate goal is to become as strong as Aaron. Meanwhile, Shannon steadies her aching heart. A month has passed since Ejil enrolled at the Hero Academy. Maya tells them that they will soon be starting their party training, wherein they will be put into groups of 4 to take on real quests from guilds. Almost immediately, nearly the entire class crowds around Ejil to try and invite him to join their group. Later, Ejil and Shannon discuss the rather lively homeroom period they had. Shannon invites him to join her party, but Ejil had already planned to team up with her from the start. They were already part of the same party in their past lives, and he wouldn't have it any other way. Shannon is overjoyed, and her happiness practically oozes out of her. However, her tone changes when Ejil reveals that he intends to invite Claire to join the party, confident that she won't hold them back at all. Shannon is jealous that Ejil seems to be so focused on Claire lately. Ejil approaches Claire about joining his party, and she happily accepts. They now only need one more person to complete their roster. They consider simply inviting someone with good grades, though Shannon strongly hopes that they invite a man instead. When Claire asks her why, Shannon claims that she isn't comfortable around girls, though she supposedly has no trouble with Claire, likely due to her knight background. Shannon makes a passing remark about Claire's chest size, which tells Ejil that this is more about that than anything else. Abby, the cheerful girl from their class, invites herself into their conversation. She offers to join their party and explicitly states that Edgel is just her type, mostly because of how nice and toned his body is. This obviously makes Clara and Shannon rather upset. Edgel recalls that she aspires to become a priestess, and Abby jokingly asks if he likes her too. With her priestess aspirations in mind, Edgel assumes that she must have some knowledge of healing spells and enchantment, but Abby tells him that she knows no such thing. In fact, she can barely use any magic at all. Shannon reveals that Abby is ranked rather lowly in swordsmanship, magic, and even general academics. Shannon asks Abby what she's good at, and Abby replies that she's fun to be around. The trio unanimously agree to find someone else. Abby quickly gives up trying to join his party, but she asks them what kind of person they're looking for to fill in their fourth slot. Upon learning that they have difficulty deciding among their classmates, Abby suggests that they look for prospective comrades from the other classes, and she offers to show them around. Abby possesses a power that often flies under the radar, the power to make friends. Abby brings the trio to Class 2, where she seems to be fairly well known and well liked. She asks them where Mikan is, and they point her to behind the school building, where she is most likely playing with ants again. Abby brings Edgel and the others and introduces them to Mikan, a necromancer. Necromancer is a forbidden form of magic that deals with raising the dead. Mikan glances at them and remarks that they all seem quite strong, especially Edgel. She thinks that they'd all make excellent undead thralls. She starts muttering to herself about attacking a party while they sleep to turn them into zombies, which raises absolutely no red flags at all. Though Edgel has no doubt that Mikan's abilities are exceptional, she is, for lack of a better term, creepy. Next, Abby brings them to the special ward to introduce them to Dorothy, a potion specialist capable of concocting nearly any mixture. Dorothy, too, senses that Edgel seems quite powerful. Abby remarks that Dorothy's potions work well, except that 1 in 3 potions cause excruciating pain. Edgel and the others decide to pass. Abby continues to introduce them to her colleagues, but their abilities are either too weak or their personalities are too eccentric to fit in with them. Abby brings them to the training grounds, where she is confident that they'll find at least one capable person to join their party. However, once there, they discover that a girl was injured after another student's flail accidentally hit her in the face. Abby reassures Edgel and the others that she can handle this. As she charges through the crowd, Edgel wonders what she plans to do, given that she can't use healing magic. Abby lays her hands over the student, and a bright light envelops her, slowly closing the wound. The student recovers nearly instantaneously. Edgel is surprised that Abby can use the Watch of the Goddess, a special divine power bestowed by the goddess herself. Using this power, it is possible to heal injuries without using a mana source. Edgel now understands why Abby is ranked so lowly. There is no instrument that could possibly measure her divine powers. When Abby returns, Edgel extends an invitation for her to join their group. Edgel highly values Abby's divine powers and her communication skills, and he formally invites her to join his party. Abby happily accepts, and she jokingly says that Edgel is totally hitting on her. Shan and Claire aren't happy. Not one bit. Their newly formed party formally register themselves at the staff office, and Meyer is quite happy with how well balanced they are. She then instructs them to take on a quest at the Adventurers Guild. A small branch office of the Adventurers Guild exists on school grounds, which is exclusively available to students. Student parties are given the initial rank of beginner, and the quests they can take on are dependent on what rank they are. Those who graduate from the academy with excellent grades are automatically given a C rank rating. Edgel picks out a simple goblin extermination quest after hearing that a nearby village has been repeatedly attacked. After filling out the appropriate paperwork, Edgel and his party travel to Hallam Village. The journey was not an easy one, especially for Abby. Shannon boasts that Edgel helped train her butt to endure harsh travels, which makes Abby wonder if she should ask him to do the same. Edgel politely tells them to stop talking as if his training exclusively focuses on their behinds. They enter the village outskirts, and it is hard to miss the charred fields and partially ruined homes. They hear 2 villagers running their way, crying out that the goblins have come. Small goblins come out of their hiding places and surround the unsuspecting villager. Edgel and his party immediately jump into action, and they quickly crush the goblin assault party. However, Edgel learns from one of the men that the goblins have kidnapped several women and young girls. The village head comes along and informs them that the goblins' den is on the outskirts of a nearby forest. He reports that the goblins suddenly turned violent and ravaged their village. He begs them to exterminate the goblins and save their people. Edgel leads his party to the goblins' lair, intending to prioritize the rescue of the hostages above all else. The entrance is guarded by 2 goblins, and Edgel would prefer them not to alert the others. He offers to kill them from afar, but Claire remarks that they need a spellcaster to attack from this range. Edgel tells her that you can always fight from far away, even as a swordsman. To demonstrate, he picks up a rock and hurls it towards one of the goblins, killing instantly. Before the second goblin can react, Edgel throws a second rock, punching a gaping hole through its chest. Anything can be a weapon if you're resourceful enough. Claire thinks that the only reason Edgel could do that was because of her abnormal strength, but Edgel is confident that she'll be able to do the same given enough training. With the guards dealt with, Edgel leads their party through the cave entrance. The cave is deep and rather narrow, but it is illuminated thanks to the light the ore emits. Abby notices a foul smell, which Edgel surmises must be the smell of goblin droppings or rotting corpses. Abby playfully latches onto his arm for protection, but Shannon tears them away before she is subjected to even more flirting. However, Edgel doesn't mind, as he'd rather have her latch on than run all over the cave. Claire remarks that they're too relaxed, even though they're so deep in enemy territory, but Edgel suddenly tells her to stop talking. Claire feels that this is unfair, but Edgel replies that the enemy is nearby. Edgel makes out the faint image of a goblin in the darkness, and he readies his staff as if preparing a spell. That spell is whacking the goblin on the head, and it folds instantly. Edgel turns around and notices that Shannon has drawn her sword, as she had also detected the goblin from the beginning. Edgel gives Claire a brief lesson on always being on your guard. Abby cheers Claire up by cheerfully exclaiming that she didn't notice anything either. They eventually come across a fork in the road. Shannon senses people coming from the left, and so does Eggy. As they walk down the tunnel, they discover the goblins and the captured village women. The goblins take notice of them and attack. Edgel welcomes them. Edgel knows that casting a magic spell here would only cause the cave to collapse. Instead, he decides to rely on his muscles, which are still his greatest asset. Like a hurricane, Edgel rips through the goblins with nothing but his fists and staff. Eventually, all the goblins lay dead. Abby fawns over how cool he was, but she points out that he's only used magic once since they came here. Edgel avoids the question, but he acknowledges that he needs to start thinking more like a magician. Edgel and the others work together to free the villagers, and he asks Shannon to lead them back to the village. Shannon doesn't want to be separated from Edgel, but he manages to convince her by stating that she is the only one he can trust to perform such a task. Shannon happily takes on the job. Abby later praises Edgel for how easily he handled Shannon. Furthermore, she remarks that Edgel is so strong that she might not even have a use for her blessing of the goddess, which allows her to heal or enchant allies. Edgel reassures Abby that they all have a role to fulfill. Abby becomes energized, proud that her supportive abilities and natural charisma more than make up for her lack of combat skills. Suddenly, Edgel grabs her by the collar and stops her from moving. He points out a slightly discolored spot on the ground, which means that it is most likely a trap. Edgel presses his hand against the ground, causing it to cave in. Rusted swords line the bottom of the pit. Edgel tells Abby to stay nearby so he can safely lead the way. Abby is all too happy to latch onto his back, but Claire tries to pry her off. As their banter settles down, Edgel realizes that goblins setting traps is rather unusual. Goblins are simple creatures, and the existence of traps implies that something smarter is commanding them. Abby notices that Claire seems to have fallen silent. Claire has been thinking about what Edgel said earlier, and she feels that she can offer nothing, as she hasn't contributed anything since arriving at Hallam. Abby and Edgel both tell her that she is overthinking it. The time will come when she can shine, and when that time comes, she simply has to do her best. When they arrive at the end of the tunnel, they encounter a guard goblin and a shaman goblin, surrounded by a large number of smaller goblins. Abby doesn't seem to be alarmed, but Claire tells her that the soldier goblin and shaman goblin are especially dangerous. Edgel tells them to calm down. These two goblins make it clear that this quest is not meant for beginner adventurers like them, and they likely kept a low profile to avoid detection. Still, Edgel views this as the perfect chance to test their strength. Edgel instructs Claire and Abby to take on the soldier goblin, confident that they'll be able to pull it off in the end. Claire steps forward and draws her sword, while Abby supports her from behind. Edgel, on the other hand, steps forward to confront the goblin shaman. The shaman orders his goblins to attack, but Edgel defeats them all with a single swipe of his staff. Seeing this, the shaman raises its own staff and starts chanting a spell, but Edgel smashes its face in before it can complete it. He looks back and sees that Claire has also wrapped up the battle with the soldier goblin. Claire is surprised that she won with Abby's help, and Edgel tells her that this is the result of her training. He commends her on her victory. However, their celebration is cut short. Edgel remarks that the real battle is just about to begin. A giant goblin steps into the room, angry that his domain has been intruded upon. This is the Goblin King. The goblin is massive, and it appears to be more demon than goblin. Edgel tells the two girls to step back while he tests out if the goblin is as strong as it looks. Edgel swings his staff, surrounding the Goblin King and some goblins in a vicious windstorm. When the storm ends, the Goblin King stands completely unfazed. Edgel had expected as much from the king. He instructs Abby and Claire to deal with the stray goblins while he takes on the Goblin King on his own. The two girls do as he asks, leaving him alone with the king. This time, Edgel has the presence of mind to use magic. He unleashes a fireball, but the Goblin King is nimble enough to blaze right past it. Edgel tries to use a lightning spell instead, but as thunder crackles down and strikes, the Goblin King stands unharmed. Edgel realizes that it possesses a powerful resistance to lightning magic. The Goblin King closes the gap in the blink of an eye, preventing Edgel from using any magic. When Abby and Claire hear the commotion, they fear the worst. Just as they are about to run over and help him, they see that he doesn't need any help at all. Even the Goblin King appears confused. It had assumed that Edgel was a spellcaster and tried to engage him in close combat. But unfortunately for the Goblin King, Edgel is stronger with his fists. With a single punch, Edgel defeats the Goblin King, but he feels bad about not using his magic. Abby and Clary wave that they have wrapped up on their end, and Edgel considers their mission complete. They head back to the village and reunite with Shannon. She tells them that the villagers have also returned safe and sound. Edgel tells the village elder that the goblins have been dealt with. The elder is overjoyed, and he tries to hand them a large pouch of gold as thanks. Edgel turns him down, stating that a simple thank you is sufficient. They'll simply receive the reward they are due when they return to the guild. Abby says that she'll happily take the gold off his hands, but Edgel tells her to control herself. Instead, the elder shows his thanks by throwing them a celebration feast as the heroes who saved their village. Abby gulps down a mug of beer and encourages Claire to do the same, but she declines, stating that one sip of alcohol is enough to make her go insane. Shannon, on the other hand, is more open to getting a little drunk. Edgel hopes that this grand banquet deepens their trust. However, a few women from the village start hitting on Edgel, and they invite him to their homes for some fun. Edgel turns them down, as he does not want to involve himself with women he barely knows. His sincerity just makes him even more attractive. Edgel suddenly feels his hairs standing on their ends. His instincts as a warrior tell him that he's in deep trouble. Edgel and his party spend the evening at Hallam Village. While Abby and Claire sleep together in one room, Edgel and Shannon sleep in another. Shannon is quite upset that women approached Edgel during the party, even though Edgel turned them down rather quickly. Edgel, eager to return to her good graces, asks what he can do to set things right. Shannon asks to sleep in his arms the whole night, threatening to pout for the rest of her life if he refuses. Edgel relents, and he does just that. A few minutes later, Shannon asks Edgel if he has also noticed an abnormality within the village. The high-level goblin monsters they saw are not normally supposed to be in a peaceful area like this. Shannon senses that this is due to a thick miasma filling the village, which is an indicator that the Demon King is close to returning. The next morning, Edgel and his party leave Hallam Village and return to the Hero Academy, where they receive their reward for crushing the goblins. The reward was more than they had expected. While discussing how to divide the spoils, Edgel is adamant about distributing them all equally among them, as it would be unfair if someone were to receive more or less than the other. Abby cheerfully suggests that they have an after-party using the reward money, as it would be a good chance to get to know each other better. Shannon is open to joining if Edgel is, but Claire is reluctant to partake. However, Edgel convinces Claire to join as well, as he believes that getting to know each other is the first step to ensuring smoother cooperation on the battlefield. Claire ultimately agrees to the party. With everyone in attendance, Abby happily leads them to the city streets. While there, she suggests that they get some shopping done. While Shannon wants some fresh new clothes to wear, Claire prefers to replenish her supply of shields and armor. Abby rejects her proposal, and they enter a chic boutique. Upon heading inside, Abby takes charge of choosing a new set of clothes for Claire, and she entrusts Edgel to select a new set of clothes for Shannon, believing that they are both men. Edgel has never had a keen interest in fashion, but he decides to try some clothes on anyway. Shannon heads to a different section to pick out clothes for herself. A retail worker, noticing that Edgel is having difficulty, suggests a special set of clothes that can magically match any physique. Edgel buys it without a second thought. On the way to the exit, Edgel notices Shannon's shoes in front of a changing booth. Shannon hears him from the other side and invites him to take a look. To Edgel's surprise, Shannon has changed into a flowy sundress, complete with a straw hat. Edgel is uncomfortable that Shannon is wearing women's clothes when she's supposed to be pretending that she's a guy. Regardless, Edgel thinks she looks great in it. Shannon takes a step forward and tells him that she wants to be a woman, at least in front of him. Edgel and Shannon join the others outside and see that Abby has given Claire a massive makeover. Edgel thinks that the look rather suits her, which dispels her fears and worries about her appearance. Once night falls, Abby brings everyone to a popular pub. The four of them have a great time. Shannon harps on Edgel to eat more vegetables, causing Abby to remark that she'd make a great housewife. Shannon grins over how much she'd like that. However, Claire appears to have no intention of marrying and living an ordinary family life. Abby tells her that it'd be good to know how to do housework, and Claire returns the question back to her. As a matter of fact, Abby is quite adept at cooking, laundry, and cleaning, as she was thoroughly trained by the sisters at the convent she lived in. Edgel finds this quite surprising, though he makes it clear that he hasn't fallen for her. Abby decides to change the mood a little by playing a little game that would be perfect at a drinking party. That game is, as expected, the King's Game, a simple game wherein lots are drawn to determine who has to carry out the King's orders. The four draw straws to see who the King will be, and it just happens to be Abby. Her first order is to have number 1 princess carry whoever is number 2, which is Edgel and Claire, respectively. Abby smirks and offers to stop the game if Claire is too embarrassed to, but Claire takes that personally. She faces the game head-on, and Edgel carries her. The sensation is enough to make her red from ear to ear. Shannon is rather jealous. Claire grabs a mug of beer, unable to go through the ordeal sober. Unfortunately, the drunken Claire is the next in line to be king. She gives a rather bold order to have number 1 kiss number 3. Edgel is number 3, and Shannon is number 1. It can't be helped. The two of them kiss in front of Abby and Claire, but they still believe that Shannon is a guy. By the next day, Edgel was the only one who remembered the events of the drinking party. The next morning, Edgel and his friends are completely hungover. Claire asks Abby if she can use her divine powers, so Abby uses them to heal their hangover headaches. Shortly after, Meyer enters the room, places a vase on a nearby desk, and begins homeroom. Later that afternoon, the class learns about the 4 great seats, a set of elite generals under the Demon King. One of them was named Hollow, famous for his troublesome necromancy. The undead feel neither pain nor fear, making them the perfect soldiers. An undead army under Hollow's command was said to rival the army of an entire country. Stories say that even the hero's party was driven into a corner by Hollow's seemingly endless hordes, but Aaron's sheer tenacity and strength eventually earned them the victory. Shan can tell that Egil isn't paying attention, but he doesn't need to be told what happened that day. Moreover, no one else in class seems to be paying full attention. A lone flower vase fills an empty seat where Cecil, one of their classmates, once sat. She died on her first mission after forming a student party. Normally, students of the Hero Academy take on quests to gather valuable experience. The mission Cecil and her party received was just supposed to be a simple herb gathering quest near the capital. The mountain is relatively safe, with close to no monsters. The guild also put the quest through extensive background checks, so by all means it should have been safe. The goblin quest they took was supposedly the most dangerous one. Abby asks Claire about Cecil, knowing that the two were neighbors. Claire seldom interacts with her classmates, but Cecil was the exception. She often brought her refreshments back when she was doing her practice swings. What happened to Cecil is still under investigation, but Shannon invites Claire to figure out what happened on their own. Abby volunteers her assistance, and so does Egil. They intend to figure out the truth together. After class, Egil expresses his surprise that Shannon was the first to suggest a joint investigation. Shannon replies that other people from other classes also died. As the founder of the school, Shannon simply cannot stand idly by. Abby uses her connections to figure out who Cecil was partied with. They approach Azel and ask him about what happened on the mountain. However, Azel is skittish and refuses to cooperate, claiming that he doesn't remember what happened. Azel frantically recounts that he and the others didn't even realize what had happened. All of a sudden, scars started appearing across their bodies. Before Azel knew it, his party had been wiped out. Azel's description seems too harrowing and sincere to be a lie, though Egil is unable to make heads or tails of his testimony. Azel remarks that Cecil was a truly kind girl, as she was nice even to a failure like him. Cecil was a shining beacon of encouragement, and Azel was better for it. He begs Egil to look into the matter and find out the truth, for Cecil's sake. Egil could feel quite a bit of magic coming from Azel, as well as a rather strange feeling, but he doesn't have enough information. Egil and the others approach Cecil's other party members and other students who similarly lost comrades, and all their stories match what Azel told them. Egil considers the possibility of invisible monsters, but the locations where each of the parties were attacked are too different for him to think of a common monster. Egil runs into Abby, who was just about to ask Mikan some questions. Mikan reveals that some of her classmates also died, but no such thing happened to her party. She observes Egil's physique again and remarks that he'd make the most powerful undead in history. Abby playfully hugs Mikan, jokingly jealous about not being considered an undead candidate. However, Mikan explains that individuals who possess some form of holy aptitude or close relationship to God can never become undead. This finally tips Egil off. A common characteristic of all the victims was that they were individuals of great moral character. He asks Mikan if it is possible for a necromancer to manipulate the memories of the undead. Mikan replies that they can, easily too, at that. This finally confirms Egil's fears. Azel and the other survivors weren't saved. All party members died at the same time. Those with righteous souls just weren't able to be revived. That means everyone they've talked to thus far is already dead. Suddenly, they hear earth-shaking shrieks and screams. Students frantically run out of the school building. Azel jumps out from the third floor and lands right in front of them. Claire holds Abby back from doing anything rash. Azel ignores the pair and goes straight for Egil. Egil avoids Azel's punch, which is strong enough to crush solid rock. Azel throws another punch, but this time Egil catches it. He can tell that Azel's strength now seems to surpass human limits. Egil shatters Azel's elbow, but Azel remains completely unfazed. Mikan reminds them that the undead have no sense of pain, and they do not fear death either. That makes them strong and dangerous. Azel continues his relentless assault, but Egil plants his fist deep into his stomach and sends him flying into the school. Azel falls down, but he quickly starts recovering again. Seeing no end to this, Egil uses earth magic to hold Azel in place to buy themselves some time. This isn't over, not by a long shot. For the undead to start attacking now means that the necromancer controlling it is nearby. He looks up and can see that whoever the necromancer is doesn't plan to let them leave. A massive magical barrier surrounds the entire school, preventing anything from entering or leaving. Egil surmises that whoever the culprit is intends to deal a massive blow to the country's military strength by attacking the Hero Academy. Claire doubts that any one individual could possibly come up with such a grandiose plan, but Egil can think of one person who can do just that. It's the necromancer known as Hollow. Abby asks who that is, and Claire gives her a refresher of what they learned in class just a while ago. Claire recalls that Hollow was supposedly defeated by Aaron 300 years ago, and while that may be true, Egil sees too many similarities between current events and Hollow's modus operandi. He fears that he might have revived. It doesn't seem impossible to him, as he and Shannon are in the same boat. Egil tells Mikan to hide for now, while he and the others seek out who the necromancer is. Egil and his comrades assist in the evacuation of the school. However, while helping students escape, Egil runs into a zombified Grand Diesel.